Hello and welcome to another episode of Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. My name is Clark. I am joined as always by my friend Evan. This is episode 10. We're talking about a rough stretch of games from our dearly beloved San Francisco Giants. But Evan and I are going to try to find a little bit of positivity, a little bit of light this week. Maybe not talk entirely about the Giants, but yeah, Evan. Giants are scuffling.
You know, it's a bit of deja vu.
Yeah.
It's a bit of deja vu. It just, it's another rough week. We, as per last week, won one game. We had that series with the Phillies. That was a rough one. For many reasons, and we just eked that one out on Wednesday. And that was an all timer. That was a nice one. That gave me some good feelings. The DeYoung game, we just picked up premier shortstop Paul DeYoung.
Premier, eh?
After the Blue Jays released him, and hey, you know, he got us one win, so I'm going to take that regardless of what happens after. But he did scuffle to two offers in this Braves series so far, so we'll see if he truly is the second coming of Cody Ross or not. But yeah, we dropped 2 of 3 to the Phillies. We've dropped 2 of 3 to the Braves so far. We're recording Sunday morning, as per usual, so you don't know the outcome of today's Wall of Fame day. We'll see if 40 forever Giants coming to the game will do anything to galvanize this team, but I suspect not.
Yeah, I don't like playing the Braves. Can we be done doing that? They're just so good. I have a real appreciation. I've watched highlights of them throughout the season, but I have such an appreciation for how good their team is after watching us just flail against them in Atlanta and then come right back to SF, and they pick up right where they left off. I mean, their offense is just so ridiculous.
Yeah, it's remember, I forget when this was, what year this was, but remember when we had somebody called it like Murderers Row or something like that. Our lineup was like that at one point. I mean, that's what the Braves are now. They've got that going. They've got starting pitching. It's real tough to beat them. And yeah, I mean, this month in general, I mean, it was talked about before it happened how tough of a stretch it would be. And, getting Braves, Phillies, Braves, Rays, Rangers all back to back has been really testing our mettle for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's I mean, like we often reference the Dodgers and how, the Giants are trying to do what the Dodgers do, but it's like, look at what the Braves have done too. I mean, I think that's a really, you talk about sustainable, they're going to be around for a long time. And I forget exactly what years this was, but there's a few years there where the Braves were, kind of middling and mediocre. And it was kind of strange because our whole childhoods, they were just always around. And now they're going to be around for our children's childhoods as well. They're truly set up in such a smart way. And I know we've talked about this at some point, but even just just a move bringing in Murphy to catch is something. I mean, ultimately it stings less because we've got Bailey around, but they
can just plug holes. Good. Yeah, they remind me of kind of a hybrid of the Dodgers and Padres a little bit, where they've got the homegrown pipeline that the Dodgers have. And I guess the Dodgers have the same the trades that they've made to shore up the high end of their roster, but just the magnitude of kind of how they've done that reminds me both of the Dodgers and the Padres. And then the way that they've locked everybody up for 10 years, basically, or, 8 to 10 years. Now that's not working out super well for the Padres, which I comment gleefully. But yeah, it's impressive to see. I mean, we've talked about this a lot, and I would say we're two of the bigger fans of the direction the Giants organization is going in. but I can appreciate when it has successfully landed and you are in that just that flow of like, yeah, we have these homegrown stars that we've built up. We've got these trades that have helped us get to this point, and yeah, their lineup is brutal and it's so well balanced. It's just really impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's you look at this team too, and it they lost Swanson, they lost
Yeah,
Freeman. Do you know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
and still they're going just as strong as they had been before. And I think that's the enviable part to me to lose marquee players and be able to just keep the line moving. So something to aspire to a little bit. And speaking of being aspirational, I went to go see Shohei Ohtani play on Friday. He didn't hear. I was kind of yelling my recruitment pitch, and he didn't seem to hear it. But it was a fun time. I yeah, the Angels were playing the Mets on Friday. It was a Japanese Heritage Night,
hmm.
which was fun, and Kodai Senga was pitching for the Mets.
That's nicely done by the Mets organization. I like that.
Yeah, and we were wondering like how much they actually coordinated it so that would work because they were giving away a ghost fork glow in the dark ball as a promotion, so they
That's
really
fun.
lined it up well. But it was cool. There was a lot of Japanese fans in attendance, um, and it well, this obviously seeing him came on the heels of some crushing news for him
Yeah.
and baseball fans around the world this
If
week, which is that
people didn't hear about this, Shohei will not be pitching again for the rest of the year. He has apparently torn his UCL joint or muscle, whichever of those. Not a doctor, but his elbow, basically the muscle
yeah,
connected to your elbow, um, or tendon connected to your elbow. Again, not a doctor.
yeah.
And it's likely he'll need to have Tommy John surgery, which doesn't mean he'll be done hitting, but he might not pitch for another season at
Yeah,
least. So
I think
it's
he'll be visiting
unfortunate.
Dr. Neil Atrache or whatever that guy's name is. But he, I think, I went with a few friends. Shout out Toria, shout out Molly, shout out Luke, who got us
Woo.
nice tickets. Um, we, like the type of player that he is like that he literally, you know, whatever's his elbow, it is gone, and then he wants to DH the next game of a doubleheader for a god awful Angels team, and that's just the kind of guy that he is. And I think it's been interesting. I mean, there's been many. The media has written about 3,000 articles
Oh
this
my
week
God.
about
The
what this means
Athletic
for his future.
alone has like 18 a day coming out about
Yeah,
Shohei, which,
it's
yeah,
unreal. But I think, obviously, for the most part, the reaction I think from fans is like sadness and depression for
yeah.
anybody, any fan of baseball, regardless of whether you're an Angels fan or not. And but then there are certain reactions of like, yeah, everybody like is making too big a deal of this, and why are people talking about like he's like baseball is dead without him? And I don't think that that's true, but I think you know there's not a lot of other players in the majors right now that I would go. Like I expressly coordinated going to this game to see him play,
Right.
and there's just and people in the comments of many articles talk about like since like I don't know like people mention Bo Jackson or
I think Barry,
Bonds or
right? I think it's since Barry, really. But yeah,
yeah, I agree. But he had a great night. They walked him like 2-3 times. He got
which
a
is very
double.
Barry like, yeah.
Yeah, and to many boos as well, which is very Barry like as well. And yeah, I mean, it's. I'm gonna be honest. I don't fully understand how the health science works of like being able to hit when your elbow is messed up. But
Well, we just saw it
hey,
with Bryce Harper.
yeah,
Anyway, I
Well,
want to
yeah,
tie that in a little bit with Harper, but yeah, I don't totally understand it either. And this is the same injury that Brock Purdy had, and he came back in like 6 months. But pitchers, the way that they use their arm, it like, yeah, no go for like
yeah.
18 months, which is just interesting the way that works.
Right. And obviously, the question then is, people have been talking about the type of numbers that he would make as a free agent, as like a premier hitter and pitcher. And obviously, now his earning power is somewhat uh, definitely affected, but he's still one of the best hitters in the game.
Right.
And so, um, and there's also the question of, does he want to, how much is pitching important to him long term? Because I've seen the argument made that it would probably behoove him to, if he wants to do both, to take next year off and
Nice
just
word.
rehab both. Thank you very much. And uh, yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the big question is whether he's going to decide to what he's going to do. And I would, if I had to guess, I'd say that he'd probably still going to hit next year because
Definitely. Yeah.
he's in his prime. He wants to compete, and so it feels like he probably will. But um, that uh, you know, I part of the reason I had gotten tickets to go see him is because there's a little bit of a thing in the back of my mind this year of like how much longer can he do this, and I don't workloads and bodies are hard and everything. But if you look back at the year, you kind of go, well, he's hitting every day. And he
Yep.
hits when he pitches even, and it's just like, when are you giving the body a break to do what it needs to do? And I think there's kind of an interesting parallel to draw here with Steven Strasburg, who just retired this week
It's a great point.
for the Nationals, who um, obviously an all-time great nap, but um, he, his innings were limited when he was coming up as a young pitcher because they wanted to, kind of preserve his health. And then, he obviously has that great run for them in 2019, all-time postseason performance, and then they gave him
Hasn't
a big old
done ever.
contract,
Yeah. Hasn't done anything since.
a very like Giants dynasty contract
Yeah.
too, kind of.
I
And
saw
he just
someone. Sorry to interrupt you. I saw
no, please.
someone put something on Twitter of like that 2019 Nats team has three of the worst contracts ever given out in the last decade, with Corbin, Strasburg, and Rendon, and like
Yeah,
how they found lightning in a bottle, and then how they chose Strasburg. Did they also sign Corbin? They
I
signed
think
both of
so.
them, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
but they didn't sign Harper, who just, oh my god, he was impressive in the Giants Philly series. We'll get back to that, um, but yeah, I think the cautionary tale of just the body is not meant to throw a baseball this hard and with this much spin this many times over, let alone hitting 50 home runs a season, which Shohei
Yeah.
is doing. It's like, yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's like proof of concept that this can't work necessarily, but he's also doing it as well as anyone could even imagine someone doing it, which is I think even more impressive with him getting hurt. It just like reveals that.
Yeah. And I think for us to get basically 2 seasons of this is a special thing as a baseball fan. But yeah, I think it's definitely affects an already uh, kind of thin free agent market
An
for next
unprecedented
offseason.
situation that he like coming into free agency in his prime as a pitcher and a hitter. I mean, that was completely unprecedented. It might change the way, as you were saying, he might not be viewed as a pitcher for a lot of teams. And
Yeah.
so is he going to prioritize? And I'll bring it to the focus of our podcast usually, which is the Giants. We have been experimenting with all types of pitching roles this year. And is Shohei interested in like let me be a bulk inning guy, or let me be an opener, or I don't know, a late inning guy? Like he can do any role pitching wise, but maybe we limit the number of innings he has and he DHs regularly. I think if we're kind of mapping out teams who would work best for him, this injury might actually open the door even more for the Giants, but that might be me trying to grasp at straws in an otherwise depressing month of Giants baseball. But I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think that's interesting. I actually hadn't considered it that way. I mean, I think just as a fan of his, I feel like I probably would want to see him not pitch again. Is kind of my weird take. I mean, like obviously it's a special thing that he's given us, but it's just you can't. 3 Tommy John surgeries is would be tough, and already 2 is a lot because he's already had his first when he came into the league, right? And so and so I don't know. I mean, an interesting thing about whoever's going to sign him this offseason is that obviously, I don't know. Well, and then if he does come back to pitch, then it's kind of like how you value him depends on like what your timeline looks like, because it's like, are you trying to push all your chips in for next year? Because if so, I mean, obviously he helps you even if he's just hitting. But then it's like, if you're trying to get that value of him as a pitcher and a hitter, then you're like looking at 2025, maybe optimistically, right, and maybe he stays healthy for that season, is able to keep pitching and whatnot. So, I don't know. I mean, I think the sales pitch for the Giants right now, every week that goes by gets weaker, I will say. But I think, and just to talk about openers quickly too, like I think I was reading Eno Saris, one of the nerds of The Athletic, was doing a Q&A, and
one of the best
they're
nerds.
Talking about one of the best nerds, and he was talking about answering some question about openers or something, and he put it very plainly, which was like, I think that openers work, but players don't like it. And I thought that was an interesting thing to consider, and I think that's kind of true of this Giants team too.
We've seen it play out with Alex Wood. I mean, I think he's the poster child for it a little bit.
Yeah, and I think we were forced into this strategy this year, and this was not the plan from the outset. I think it was always going to be part of how this team was used, but I think the hope was that somebody of the Mania, Stripling, these
8 guys starters that we went into the season with,
exactly, would step up and be able to be more counted on, because this isn't a sustainable way to do a season. It's just not.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear Farhan's take on whether or not this is sustainable. Lately, they have not been winning in the opener games. I think a few weeks ago we cited that they were like 15-6 in games started by an opener or whatever. But right now, the issue with us losing games started by an opener is more the offense than it is the pitching. Pitching still remained pretty good. Yesterday, Ryan Walker opened, gave up a run, but I mean, in the 4th inning, it was tied 2-2, and the Braves just kept scoring runs, and we couldn't keep up with them, So, I don't know. I think, we went into this year trying to have as much starting pitching depth as possible, and we still have 2 functional starters now, 3 with Kyle Harrison getting stretched out. I think he'll continue to build up his innings. And we haven't even talked about him. We can come back to him in a sec. Or actually right now, like his debut is really impressive. And I think as he gets built up, he's kind of ostensibly an opener. But like, I think, and again, bring this back to my point about Shohei, we're very clearly intentional about workload with starting pitchers. And that's some of where this opener stuff is coming from. Like Alex Wood hasn't faced a lineup the 3rd time around in like 2 years. Manaea and Stripling aren't going more than 3 or 4 innings, whether they're starting or relieving. So for Shohei's workload, if he comes to the Giants, I feel like there's already just like a theme in place for that. Anyway, just a little aside, but
Yeah, I think thinking about being overworked and whatnot, like, kind of makes me think about. So one of the things that's been talked about this week is Duvall. He
Yeah.
blew a fourth consecutive save, which
I
has
think
not
that
happened
stat
since.
I think that stat is a little disingenuous, honestly, but it is true.
Yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to something. I mean, like, just seeing how he looked on the mound, there's something slightly off. I don't know exactly what it is, but um and I've read articles about what's going on and why it's happening, and I have a hard time believing it's anything other than how hard we've worked him this year,
Yeah.
and just the amount of innings that he's thrown. And ultimately, we we've had a mostly strong bullpen with the Rogers twins and him at the back end. And I just think that um, for a team that's so like loosey goosey about roles and platooning and openers and everything, that this guy is gonna be the guy in the ninth and elsewhere all the time is I think it's a tall order for him. And um, I think we've gotten used to guys pitching in the triple digits regularly, but I think maybe there's a reason that that didn't used to happen in baseball as much. I mean, obviously, sports science and you're seeing more athletes in the game and games getting younger and everything. But pitching, again, to bring it all back, is like, it's hard to do, and
It
it's
is.
not a natural thing for your arm to do. And um, I just think that that might be something to consider for next year in terms of how we deploy him. And I don't know how much this was part of what happened in 2021 in
Mm.
the Dodgers series with him too. But the baseball season's a long season, and I think there's a reason that people have different front halves of the season versus back half of the season. And I think it was, like, there's also a parallel this week with Felix Bautista of the Orioles. Just his UCL, I think, is being looked at now, and he and Doval are probably the best closers in the game, some of the best this year.
Yeah.
And now he's probably headed for Tommy John, and they're kind of similar pitchers in that way. And so it's like, you really have to. I think, past performance doesn't indicate anything about future performance. I mean, it does. Obviously, you have to like make decisions off of something, but yeah, I don't know. I think that um, workload for him is definitely something to look at next year, because he was definitely one of the bright spots of this season, and would
Yeah.
love to see him. I
Well,
don't
and I
know,
think
finish strong.
we even tried to address this going into the season. Signing Taylor Rogers, getting Luke
Hmm.
Jackson, guys who have been closers or late inning relievers previous places in their career. But Duvall's just been so good that I think Gabe, and I think justifiably so, is putting him out there when we need to win games. And our offense has been so mediocre that we don't really have too much margin for error. So I think it's one of those things that's like related to everything, where
Yeah,
if we weren't in so many 1-run games, then we wouldn't need Doval so often. But we haven't been winning that much, so he hasn't been pitching that much in August either. So
yeah,
I
that's
think it's
true.
interesting that the timing of him struggling, it might just be, he's been so good that it might just be, his average, or like his ERA over the season kind of just evening out, so to speak, of like what
Yeah,
he truly is as a pitcher. Um, Also, he
that's
gave up
true.
a homer to Bryce Harper, who was hitting everything in the world last week, or this past week.
That's
So, yeah,
That's what I was going to say as well. I mean, it's like, it's the strength of the opponents that we've been playing is high, and
yeah,
I think that that's weirdly something that doesn't factor into how we talk about players' performance enough. It's just like,
yeah,
when you're playing better players, your results might be worse, and like, that's just part of it. But
yeah. If I can talk a
yeah,
little bit about Kyle Harrison, so his
please.
debut, which was really fun for the two of us because we talked about it last week, knew it was coming, but didn't know what day. And then our episode dropped, and we put something on Instagram. We made a reel that got a considerable number of views, which was fun for the two of us as we're starting this endeavor. So keep watching stuff, people. But no, I think his debut was so exciting. And to your point about the star power of the lineup we faced, I mean, his first at bat was against his first, batter faced in the major leagues was Trey Turner. He struck him out looking. And then, or no, whoops. Kyle Schwarber hit a double, but then Trey Turner struck out. And Harper hit a 2-run homer off of him, but man, I mean, what a way to like enter the big leagues, to be like, yep, you are in the major leagues, 22 years old, drafted out of high school, has just had such a meteoric rise through our system, is so talented, and was just blowing fastballs by some of the best hitters in the world. Guys who were in the World Series last year. And and some of the best right-handed hitters too. It was interesting. He didn't get a single lefty out his entire outing and mowed down all these really good right-handed hitters, which was sample size wonkiness, but kind of a funny little side note. And he's going to be up the rest of the year, and showed like Rodon type stuff, which was exciting. So his debut was definitely a moment, I feel like, for this season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as has become clear, probably if you have listened to these episodes, I'm not watching a lot of games these days, but I tuned in for most of his start and was live texting you excitedly. I feel like I have a real way of jinxing things, and somehow I feel like I caused the Harper homer. But besides that, I mean, you just like the way that fastball is playing, and the way like the game started with, they were clearly like throw us strikes. That was like the approach, and just like wait until he gets in the zone. But that fastball is just too good. It looks hittable, and then it's not. And it's not the fastest ever. It's like 97, 98 or something. But there must be something in like
his
the
arm
movement of it.
And
that is just impressive. And it feels like it'll play long term in the majors for sure as he gets stretched out and figures out how to navigate, both handed hitters and stuff. But I think he's here to stay for sure.
And they're going to build him up. He threw like 60 pitches in that outing, went 3 2/3. I think it's such a great way to have a rookie kind of, he's a fixture in this organization for a long time if things go right. So having a guy like that not throw 8 innings his first time out and really exhaust him. I've seen a conversation about like letting guys, the Phillies broadcasters actually were kind of harping on the Giants a little bit for not letting their prospects, their pitching prospects, kind of like go through the lineup a few times, struggle, and have to like learn how to deal with that. But I think they're doing a very intentional job of like, this kid's 22, and the Giants know better than anyone what it looks like when we, really push our starting pitchers, our young drafted starting pitchers. Kane, Lincecum, and Bumgarner all had careers that were shorter than the average, like really good pitcher. And Bochy, who we both love, definitely was not shy about having him throw 100, 120 pitches, And if Kyle's going to live between 60 and 80 for the rest of his first season, especially the Giants aren't going anywhere this year. The development is the important part. And that difference of 20 pitches is not going to help or hurt our team, I don't think.
Yeah. And also, I think that the amount of pitches he's throwing is a result of his injury mid-season. Like, I think that he would have been closer to 100 pitches already if not for that injury. And I think that was the plan all along. So it's like kind of do your homework, John Kruk or whoever the announcers are for the Phillies.
And I think part of that too is Logan Webb had a really interesting development where because he had Tommy John surgery, he then got suspended for using a banned substance in his recovery. So he was suspended for 80 games. Then he came up, or not, he didn't come up, but he debuted in 2019. But then he started the COVID year in the minors. He never got super stretched out. And a knock on him was, well, we don't know how, deep he can go into games. He hasn't really been, doing that at all in the minors. And now he's leading the league in innings this year. So I do think that slow buildup might be proof of concept for Farhan and Kapler and the team of like, let's let these young guys slowly get their arm strength up, and then let them, once they show us that their mechanics are sound throughout a whole start and all that, then that's where we'll extend them a little bit. But going into next year with Logan Webb and Kyle Harrison 1-2 makes me very excited, just as a default for the prospects of next year, let alone all the rookies on the position player side. But yeah.
I was curious, do you know if Cobb is here next year?
I think we have him for one more year. I think Disclafani and Wood are gone, which I think will be welcomed. Stripling and Mania both have a player option for $11.5 million next year. I would be shocked if either of those guys turn that down. So I'd imagine they're both back. And then who else do we have for starters? We have like Tristan Beck, Keaton Wynn, like but I think we're in good shape projecting into next year potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit. I think it would be nice to I don't know. I know that we're in a playoff hunt right now, technically.
We're definitely not talking as if we are. But you are right.
This is just something that just occurred to me, but I feel like I kind of like to see some of these guys start. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
I feel like the results aren't that much better, slotting Scott Alexander before Mania. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, well, I'd love to see Mania start, like Striplings, like just try and see. And I think that it'd be worth seeing what we have for next year too, because I think 1, 2, 3 is maybe not so much an issue. But it's 4, 5. I think that is the thing that we need to look at more.
I would say love. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, I was just gonna say I am really missing Keaton Wynn. I think he is absolutely one of our 5 best starters this year and next year. And I think Tristan Beck has shown enough that he should be a starter. He started his entire career in the minors, so it's not as if he's been a reliever. It's not a Zach Littell situation. Shout out Zach Littell for the second straight episode. But yeah, I think going into next year, if that's our rotation, if it's Webb, Harrison, Cobb, Wynn, Beck, Stripling, I kind of still like Mania out of the bullpen. I think he's been really good out of the bullpen this year, although last couple outings have been a little rough. But again, competition more than him faltering, I think. But yeah, I do agree with you. I think solidifying starters.
Because I think for this team, bullpen games are part of the equation one way or the other.
Yeah.
Even with a full complement. Like, I think, you look at the Dodgers, and I mean, they've been riddled with injuries for their staff, but they're still going to do those bullpen games occasionally. I just think that it wears over a season, maybe. And also, part of the success, I think, of it for the first half of the season was John Brebbia, honestly, I think is underrated in his role to, as being that opener. And I think he really thrived. And we've seen Walker do well at times.
I think Walker's done very well as well. But when we have 3 spots to fill and only one Ryan Walker, I think it's really tough to make that work.
And then we're also spending the Ryan Walker coin in the first inning, and then you don't have him later. And so I think there's a kind of cascading effect, I think, on the rest of the bullpen losing him, and his recovery ended up taking longer than what they initially said. But
he's coming back soon.
He's coming back. Yeah, I want to talk about that just for a bit. Like, I wouldn't quite say that the cavalry is coming, but theoretically, we have at least some reinforcements on the way. Brebbia due up soon. I think Yaz is maybe going to be the first person we see back, and then
and Haniger's we're talking in about Sacramento too. On a rehab right now.
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm so excited to see Mitch Haniger play for us.
I'll be excited for you. I think I'm excited. He's a good hitter. When he's right, he can absolutely carry a lineup for a week.
It's true. I think like his talent level is undeniable. I think it's just a question of if there's enough time to kind of like get acclimated back to MLB pitching and just like to his routines and everything. But
it's a great point because we've seen him struggle to get kind of in the flow, so to speak, already this year because he started the year on the IL. So,
yeah. But I mean, I think it'll be really nice to have Yaz back. I think a quick shout out to Wade Meckler, who you say has been hitting.
Yeah, no, I mean he really found himself in that Paul DeYoung game. If DeYoung had not kind of stolen the spotlight, I think Meckler, he made a really cool diving catch in the ninth inning. He went like I think 3 for 5 in that game too, and you're seeing why the Giants really. Well, at least I'm seeing why the Giants are really high on this kid.
You're the only one.
I'm the only one, and I'm proud. Meckler is my platonic ideal of the perfect baseball player. Skinny, small, just hits singles up the middle and just sprays singles all around. Is fast, but doesn't steal bases. What I'm saying is I don't like superstars. I don't like.
I think what you're saying is if you were to play in the majors, you would be Wade Meckler. I think is 100% kind of the thing.
And I would rock glasses and a mustache and just lean into it perfectly. Anyway, he as of this recording, I'm not exactly sure what the stats were yesterday, but he had been on a nice roll where he was like 9 for his last 15 or 9 for his last 14 or something.
I mean, you like to see that. And I think that, I think it came under some scrutiny, the Cap standing behind him and just having him up at all. But I think it was nice to see, some faith be placed in him. And I think in general, I also wanted to quickly shout out, as if he's listening. Shout out Austin Slater too, because really nice play to save the game. I don't think we win that one ultimately
we don't.
On Wednesday without him, and a nice pinch hit at bat as well. But he had talked about as well that the management and coaches just reiterate that they trust in Slater, in Meckler. Something I did want to briefly touch on is in Roger Munter's Substack. I've started to be reading again. He covers the minors for the Giants, not for the Giants, for himself. And he had talked about Ramos, who is back up right now, I think, for the time being, probably until Yaz gets back. And what he had said that I thought was interesting is that, what I think it's the Meckler Ramos thing is kind of like the choice that the Giants have been making.
And that was the impetus for the kind of viral clip of Kapler pushing back on reporters too. It was like, why did you pinch hit Meckler this time and not for Ramos? So anyway, I think it's a perfect and very neat comparison.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to look at them both because Meckler kind of plays this role that we didn't have on this team, kind of grinder, just like hustle guy. And then on the flip side, if you look at Ramos's AAA numbers, he's been stinging the ball like a higher exit velocity than a lot of players on our team right now. And Roger was making the case that maybe that's what you needed more on this roster, perhaps. But the notable difference between the two is that Ramos never really has had that support from coaches to be like,
Yeah.
I believe in this kid. He's just a kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's had all these cups of
Right.
coffee and has never really had a full
Meckler
vote of
gets it.
confidence.
Meckler gets it his first week in the bigs. And I think a lot of it's tied to the organizational philosophy of hitting, which is controlling the zone,
Exactly.
waiting, letting pitches go, having a really great understanding of the strike zone. And then when the ball is in the zone, you swing and hit it as well as you can. And I think Meckler, throughout his entire minor league career, he had something of like a 93% contact rate in the zone when he swung, which is insane. And then his walk to strikeout ratio was like 1-1, whereas Ramos, like, if you throw him a good slider off the plate, he's gonna wave at it, much like Casey Schmidt. And I think, to your point, like, I think clearly prioritize the grinder mentality, the controlling of the strike zone over this, and it's interesting because Ramos has been in our system since 2017, but they're the same age. And I think Ramos was drafted by a different regime, and I think that's also part of it, where like Wade is our guy.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. I mean, it's interesting, and I was kind of thinking about this when we were talking about the Braves earlier. It's And this is not to defend Kapler or Farhan detractors, but I think it's easier to buy into an organizational philosophy when you see it work at the major league level. And so far, it's mostly been 2021 that has been proof of concept of like the thing that we're trying to build. And so,
and I would say the proof lies in guys like Posey, Longoria, Belt, and Crawford having their last career year kind of thing. Although Belt might argue that he's having it this year too. But
yeah, he's having a good year. But yeah, I mean, I think this year is. I think it's really important how we play this last month of the season, and less so necessarily for playoff implications. Like, I think I've let that ship sail in my mind a little bit. But though it's never out of the question, you never know. We could turn on the Jets, but I think it's just. I think it'd just be nice to get a little bit of momentum going into the offseason just to like feel good about where we're at and feel good about some pieces. And, would love to see Meckler keep hitting, seeing Harrison get stretched out slowly. Like, I think those would be really exciting developments for the rest of the season.
I think what I'm excited for is we've got all these rookies on our team who are going through a playoff hunt. And if we don't make the playoffs this year, all of these guys have experience of playing big games basically since the beginning of August. I mean, we've been playing playoff type games because the wild card in the NL is so tight. So this is going to be a good experience no matter what. It's been fun to see us trot out lineups of our outfield being Meckler, Ramos, and Matos. And I'm kind of bummed to see Yaz and Haniger coming back, honestly, even though I'm 100% sure they're better players for this Giants team this year. But getting those guys reps, it's so unfortunate that Luciano keeps getting hurt because if he was healthy, we wouldn't have signed Paul DeYoung. Which is an aside for DeYoung. I was laughing. I was listening to the broadcast, or I was watching the Giants game this week, and Mike Krukow keeps saying DeYoung as in the museum, and not that it's that different, but it's like DeYoung is the way I think you're like supposed to say it. But us San Franciscans are so used to saying DeYoung because we have a museum with that name that's how we pronounce his name, and it kind of cracked me up when I was sitting on the couch alone. So I needed to share that out loud. Thank you for hearing me out. We should just have a segment that is Clark's takes from watching Giants games alone in his apartment.
I mean, that's what this podcast is. I mean, basically. And I think we're about at the end of this week's pod. Thank you for joining us this week. We've got the Reds and the Padres coming up this week. These
two
are
big series.
Big series, good teams, but they're winnable. They're winnable, even as like dire as things have been. So
they're not on the
gonna pray
Phillies
for
and Braves level. Yeah, these are different teams with flaws. Yeah. So, and we've been playing a little bit better. We haven't mentioned Wilmer Flores once in this episode, but just quick shout out to Wilmer, who is playing like a friggin' MVP this year. Jesus, he is
doing
so
everything
good.
he can.
Yeah. And Tyro's looking good.
Yeah. How many wins do you think we need this week to like stay relevant?
I would love 4. Just
4. I think that's the target for me too. I would love to see 4.
Weirdly, especially against the Reds, I would love to put a little distance between us and them, or not distance. We're like tied right now, but yeah.
Yeah, I
think we
agree.
can get
I
4
think
wins. All of these are at home,
yeah.
right? Oh no, the first series at home and then we're down in San Diego.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Harrison starting on Monday probably is a good start to the week. So hopefully he can get some things going, and then we've got a stretch here. I know we just went through this tough, Rangers, Braves, Phillies thing, but now we've got Reds, Padres, Cubs. I know have been hot, but then Rockies, Guardians, Rockies, and then D-backs for like the next month, and so that's. If there's ever going to be a time to turn on the Jets, it's right now. So let's see. We'll hope and we'll pray. But until then, we will see you next week on Foggy with a Chance of Seagulls. Have a great week.
Thanks, y'all.